You cannot multitask. What your brain actually does is switch rapidly between tasks, losing performance on both every time it switches. That feeling you have right now of reading and thinking simultaneously? It is a construct. Here are 16 trivia questions about psychology that will make you question whether you actually know yourself at all. What is the Dunning-Kruger effect? What is the Dunning-Kruger effect? A cognitive bias in which people with limited knowledge in a domain overestimate their own competence, while genuine experts tend to underestimate theirs. The original 1999 study found that people who scored in the bottom quartile of logic tests believed they had outperformed the majority of participants. How long does the brain take to form a first impression of a stranger? How long does the brain take to form a first impression of a stranger? As little as 100 milliseconds, a tenth of a second. Research shows that snap judgments of trustworthiness, competence, and likability made from a fraction of a second of exposure remain remarkably consistent even when people are given significantly more time. What is the Zeigarnik effect? What is the Zeigarnik effect? The tendency to remember uncompleted tasks far better than completed ones. Psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik discovered in the 1920s that the brain holds open unresolved tasks in working memory as a motivational prompt, releasing them only once they are done. It is also why cliffhangers in television are so effective. What is confirmation bias? What is confirmation bias? The tendency to seek out, favor, and remember information that confirms beliefs you already hold, while dismissing evidence that contradicts them. It operates largely below conscious awareness, and is considered one of the most pervasive and consequential cognitive biases in human decision-making. What is the bystander effect? What is the bystander effect? The finding that individuals are significantly less likely to help someone in an emergency when other people are present. The more bystanders there are, the less likely any single person is to act, a phenomenon called diffusion of responsibility. The larger the crowd, the stronger the effect. What is the mere exposure effect? What is the mere exposure effect? The psychological tendency to develop a preference for things simply because you have encountered them before. The more familiar something is, the more positively you evaluate it, even with no conscious memory of previous exposure. This is the psychological mechanism underpinning most advertising. What is the cocktail party effect? What is the cocktail party effect? The brain's ability to focus on one conversation in a noisy room while filtering out everything else, but immediately detecting your own name spoken across the room. It demonstrates that the brain continues processing unattended information below the level of conscious awareness. What does flow state mean in psychology? What does flow state mean in psychology? A condition of complete absorption in a task, characterized by effortless concentration, loss of self-consciousness, and a distorted sense of time. Coined by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, it reliably occurs when the difficulty of a task precisely matches the skill level of the person performing it. Why do judges grant fewer paroles just before lunch? Why do judges grant fewer paroles just before lunch? Decision fatigue. Studies of parole hearings found that approval rates dropped to near zero before a meal break, then recovered immediately after the judges ate. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational judgment and impulse control, is highly sensitive to blood sugar and fatigue. What is the self-serving bias? What is the self-serving bias? The tendency to attribute successes to your own character or ability, and failures to external factors or bad luck. It is one of the most robust and universal biases in psychology, appearing consistently across cultures and age groups, and functions primarily as a mechanism for maintaining self-esteem. What is the sunk cost fallacy? What is the sunk cost fallacy? The tendency to continue investing time, money, or effort into something because of what has already been spent on it, rather than on whether future investment makes sense. Rational economic theory holds that past costs are irrelevant to future decisions. Human psychology consistently disagrees. What is cognitive dissonance? What is cognitive dissonance? The mental discomfort that arises when a person holds two contradictory beliefs simultaneously, or when their behavior conflicts with their beliefs. First described by Leon Festinger in 1957, the brain typically resolves it not by changing behavior, but by adjusting beliefs to match what the person is already doing. What is the availability heuristic? What is the availability heuristic? A mental shortcut in which you estimate the likelihood of something based on how easily an example comes to mind. Because dramatic events, plane crashes, shark attacks, terrorism, are vivid and memorable, people consistently overestimate their probability, while underestimating mundane risks like heart disease. What is the fundamental attribution error? What is the fundamental attribution error? The tendency to explain other people's behavior in terms of their personality, while explaining your own in terms of circumstances. If someone cuts you off in traffic, they are a reckless person. If you cut someone off, it was because you were in a hurry. It is considered one of the most widespread errors in social judgment. What is the name-letter effect? What is the name-letter effect? The tendency to feel slightly more positively about things that share letters with your own name. Studies show people are statistically more likely to live in cities, choose careers, and even marry partners whose names resemble their own, entirely without conscious awareness. It is part of the broader phenomenon known as implicit egotism. What psychological concept explains why people dislike losing something more than they enjoy gaining the same thing? What psychological concept explains why people dislike losing something more than they enjoy gaining the same thing? Loss aversion, identified by psychologists Kahneman and Tversky in the 1970s. Research consistently finds that the pain of losing something is roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. It shapes everything from financial decisions to the way political campaigns are framed.